Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Student Economist, where choosing to spend your time here is infinitely better than the opportunity cost. So, before us, we have 2017, the paper 1, Unit 1 for economics, and let's go through it in preparation for the examination tomorrow on Friday. So, a util is best described as a unit to measure C, satisfaction. Consumer surplus. Wait, hold on, before I ever get to this, um, the answer is satisfaction due to the fact that a util is it's a concept under marginal utility theory where the cardinalists actually view the util as the unit that they use for satisfaction, and this util is supposed to show the amount of utility or satisfaction a consumer derives from a certain good in actual numbers. So this is the cardinalist view of satisfaction. So yes, 2 says consumer surplus may be defined as C, the difference between total utility and total spending. So again, this is essentially the additional benefit that consumers receive from the difference between their reservation price, that's the maximum price that they're willing and able to pay, and then the lower market price that they actually do pay. So it's due to the fact that their reservation price is higher than their market price, the price that they actually pay. That difference actually indicates the additional benefit, which is known as consumer surplus. Okay, which of the following graphs show constant return? So constant return, we're looking for a graph that looks like this. So the answer would be D. Moving on, the term effective demand refers to what consumers are willing and able to buy at a particular period of time. So really and truly, we're looking for the keywords: the ability to buy and also willing to buy. So this represents the desire, willing, and then ability really speaks to purchasing power. So it's backed by the ability to actually pay for the good and actually use their income to pay for said good. 5 says, on the diagram, point F represents A, inefficiency. Inside of the PPF, this is a point, a combination where resources are being underutilized, because along the curve we find that this is where we are most efficient. This along the PPF, this is the curve of allocative and productive efficiency. So allocative meaning that it's produced in a way where consumer and producer surplus are being maximized, as well as the fact that they're done at the lowest cost possible. So along this line, it's efficient, but in this area, we're being inefficient either with how costly it is to make it, or essentially seeing that it's not in a combination, or we're not producing enough bread or soda in accordance with what society wants. So that's why it's inefficient. As the price of good X increased from 5 to 11, the quantity supplied increased from 700 to 800. What is the value of the price elasticity of supply? So remember, price elasticity of supply refers to, in a formulaic sense, percentage change in supply over percentage change in price. So we're going to quickly calculate each one. So the price elasticity of supply is equal to 82 minus 700 over 700 times 100. This would actually give us 17%. And then percentage change in price is equal to 11 minus 5 over 5 times 100. Remember, this formula is new minus old over old, new minus old over old, and this will end up giving us 120%. 17% over 120% will give us 0.14, which is our answer right here, A. Item 7 says, which is the most likely reason for the fall in price from OP1 to OP2? As you can see, there's a shift, there's a rightward shift from S0 to S1, which shows that there's an increase in supply, and this increase in supply drove down the price, the equilibrium price from P1 to P2, which is essentially an increase in supply causing that decrease in price. B. Which segment of the curve represents a short run supply curve? That is E to H. An increase in the price of yam is most likely to result in a, let's first draw it on the graph. We're saying you're going to increase the price of yam. So as we go up the curve, we're seeing that you will have a movement along the curve because it's a price determinant. So this would mean that you're moving from X to Y, from price 20 to price 30. So you're increasing the price and it's a movement along the curve. So that would be a contractionary movement along the demand curve from X to Y. So that is actually D. Okay, so 10 says the firm presently produces at point X. What will be the most likely change if the firm decides to produce at point Y? So we see it's kind of cut off, but let me just draw a little line here to say this would be capital. Sorry, it's a bit outside. So the y-axis represents capital goods, while the x-axis represents consumer goods. So essentially, with this, you're saying that you have to, in order to go from X to Y, you're going to have to, you want an increase in consumer goods, but you're going to have to sacrifice, you're going to decrease your capital goods. So as you can see, D is the best answer because it coincides with what we've just illustrated on the graph. There will be a decrease in capital goods and an increase in consumer goods. So you see you move from 4 units to 12 units of consumer goods. Because it's cut off, I'm not entirely sure how many units, but you do have a decrease in capital goods. So the answer will be B. So 11 says, in what stage of production should the firm operate? Generally speaking, they should operate in stage 2. And stage 2 is shown to be BC in this drawing, because in stage 1 you find that there's underutilization of the resources, and in stage 3 you find the opposite, where there's inefficiency of resource allocation. It's because there's a decrease in total product, further decrease in average product, and even marginal product is gone negative in stage 3, where CD is. So it's not efficient to actually operate in stage 3. It's not efficient to operate in stage 1 because everything is still not utilized to the maximum. In stage 2, we notice that the firm is operating very efficiently, in the sense that they actually peak at the end of stage 2 with their total product, and marginal product, reaches zero at the end, and reaches zero at the end as well, at the end of stage 2. So this is the most efficient of the 3 stages. So the best answer will be BC, which is an example of a price ceiling, that is rent control. Again, this is a subsidy, so this would shift the supply curve to the right. This is a tax, so obviously this would shift the supply curve to the left. And minimum wage law, that would actually be a price floor. So best answer is A, rent control. Which area on the graph depicts consumer surplus? And that is B, PUT, right? Because as we can see right here, we see our market price, reservation price, and then we have our equilibrium price, our quantity, right there at T. So PUT would represent that consumer surplus, that additional benefit that consumers receive. 14 says, at which point would a fall in price cause total revenue to remain unchanged? Now, for this question, essentially it is looking for the point on the demand curve where there will be unit elasticity, meaning where will there be a PED of 1. So please note that the demand curve can be split into about 3 different ranges. So This first range, price elasticity, is actually greater than 1. This is the elastic range. Middle, that is where unit elasticity occurs, where PED is equal to 1. And then where PED is actually less than 1, this is the inelastic range. Now, it says, at which point would a fall in price cause total revenue to remain unchanged? That means that no matter what, even if the price goes up, maybe it goes down, it would be unchanged. The best answer would actually be the unit elastic region, because this is where PED has a proportionate change. So if there's a fall in price, there's a proportionate increase in demand. So there would be no change really in total revenue. And the point where this happens is actually C, Y. So Y, that's where it happens. 15 says, which of the following statements is true if X is an inferior good? That is D. YD is negative. Remember that for inferior good, there's an inverse or negative relationship between consumer income and quantity demanded. 16 says positive economic profit arises when average revenue is greater than average cost. That is A. A situation in which it is impossible to reallocate consumption activities to make at least one person better off without making anyone else worse off is known as C, Pareto optimality. This is where productive efficiency, and allocative efficiency occurs. 18 says, which of the following types of goods are non-rivalry and non-excludable? That is public goods. 19 says, based on the size of the Herfindahl-Hirschman index for the data in the table above, how would the market be described? So the thing when you're calculating HHI, you have to essentially add up all the squared market shares. Sorry, not 5. To add them all up, and then you interpret that figure. So after doing all of this, you end up with this 3,338, which would be highly concentrated because it's greater than 1,800. So that answer would be C. Additionally, 4 firm concentration ratio. So we'd go with the 4 largest firms in the industry, and just, wow, why am I scaring it? We just add up their market shares. So you go 50 plus 20 plus 10 plus 10. That will give you 95, which is D. That's the 4 firm concentration ratio for this question. 21 says, using the marginalist approach to determine equilibrium price and quantity, what is the area between Q1 and Q2 called? So again, this using this marginal approach, so that means that you look where MR equal MC. So they mean the equilibrium price is Q1. The equilibrium price is P1 and the output is Q1. And then we notice that at output Q1, average cost is actually at its minimum. So at this point, there would be no excess capacity because they're at the lowest cost possible. However, if we go to Q2, you find that it's not at the minimum cost of the AC curve. Therefore, this would mean that there's excess capacity going on between Q1 and Q2, which means that the answer would be D. What level of profit is being made in this graph? And as we can see, AC is actually equal to AR. AR is the demand curve. As you can see, they intersect at where output Q1 is taking place. So the answer would be AR equal AC. The answer would be normal profit because there is no excess abnormal profit and they're not making a loss. So the answer would be A. A firm that has achieved Pareto efficiency produces goods B and allocates efficiently. They should say allocates resources efficiently, but that is the best answer given out of all of these. This is only productive, this is too vague, and A is just talking about consumer surplus only. And remember, Pareto is when productive and allocative efficiency occurs, so there needs to be for for allocated efficiency, both consumer and producer surplus is maximized. Which of the following is a public good? That would be C, street light. Deadweight loss is seen as B, a decrease in net welfare of society. Which of the following is not a cause of market failure? That would be A, taxation. B, monopolies. They essentially charge high prices and they often underproduce, and they do not produce at the level that is socially optimal. They produce below that. Externalities that could either be we call it now positive or negative externalities, which lead to external benefits and external costs overall due to underconsumption, underproduction for the positive externality side, and overconsumption and overproduction on the negative externality side, which is an discrepancy in social marginal benefit and social marginal cost. D, imperfect knowledge, that comes from some asymmetric knowledge where essentially the producer knows more than the consumer, and that would then lead to some type of market failure as well. 27 says if the cost of producing a good to an additional person is 0, then the good is D, non-rival. 28 says if there is no healthcare insurance, what would be the equilibrium price and quantity of healthcare? That is P2Q2. 29 says if the healthcare company offers to pay half of the cost of healthcare, what would be the price and quantity demanded of the consumer? That would be P3 and Q3. This is where the consumer would want it, and this is the output that would happen. 30 says in a perfectly competitive market, a firm can maximize its profit in the short run when. Okay, so this question is a bit it's testing for your knowledge of the theory of the perfectly competitive firm. So remember, in the short run, the perfectly competitive firm actually utilizes a perfectly elastic curve, right? Okay, 30. In a perfectly competitive market, a firm can maximize its profit in the short run when. Okay, this question is basically testing for your ability to understand perfect competition, the theory of it essentially. So remember, maximize profit where MR equal MC, right? And remember, in a perfectly competitive market, they utilize what we know as a perfectly elastic demand curve, where demand is actually equal to marginal revenue, is equal to average revenue, which is equal to price. So, out of all of these answers, we don't actually see MR equal MC, but we see marginal cost is the same as average revenue, which is true, because remember that marginal revenue is the same thing as average revenue in a perfectly competitive market. So with the firm, the average revenue is the same thing as marginal revenue. So it's essentially saying that marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, which is equal to average cost. So as you can see right here with the MC curve here, they would be maximizing their profits where MR equal MC and MR is the same thing as AR. So right at this point, they would maximize profits. Let me put that in a different color, right at that point right there. 31 says longevity is a component of which of the following measures, and that is B, the HDI. Remember, the HDI tests for 3 things: longevity, which means life expectancy; knowledge, which refers to literacy rate, and they also look for what we call the real GDP, or the overall income levels within the economy of that certain nation. 32 says which of the following factors is not likely to cause a shift in the supply curve for labor, and that is A. All the other ones will cause a shift. The cost of labor would actually cause a movement along the supply curve, either expansionary or contractionary. 33 says marginal physical product is best described as C, the total output from employing an extra unit of labor. Which of the following, in 34, which of the following economic concepts does the shaded area in the triangle above represent? That is B, economic rent. That's above the transfer earnings right here. Which of the following represents labor supply? That would be AB from here to here. 36 says, Magic Limited observed that as it hired additional fairy godmothers, the marginal output of glass slippers initially increased, but then eventually decreased continuously. This observation can be explained by C, the law of diminishing returns. The law of diminishing returns states that as increasing variable factors are added to a fixed factor, the total utility will initially increase and until it reaches a peak, and then from this peak it will eventually decrease until it is equal to 0. Right, so that is law of diminishing returns. Which of the following government policies is least likely to reduce poverty? And that is D, the implementation of a regressive tax system. Increasing child benefit payments will reduce poverty because one of the causes of poverty is the number of dependents that someone may have. So if you have child benefits payments, that would allow for you to like have more disposable income in that regard and be able to uplift yourself out of poverty. Likewise, the introduction of housing subsidies would allow for people to get housing and probably get it at a competitive cost that would allow for people to have more disposable income, thus alleviating poverty. And the introduction of book grants essentially improves human capital, and through the improving human capital, you would allow for the overall labor force to be more, no, not that, through improving human capital, you would allow for yourself to get yourself into more higher paying jobs, and that would allow for you to have more disposable income. And you can also take it from the angle that you wouldn't have to pay for these books as well because you get book grants, so that would reduce poverty as well. 38 says, total social cost of cutting trees for lumber and firewood results in D, the rising chance of flooding, that's the external cost, plus private cost of cutting the trees. Remember, social cost is equal to private cost plus external cost. Demand for teachers is based on the demand for educational services. Which of the following types of demand does this describe? That is B, derived demand. When examining the Lorenz curve, a Gini coefficient of 100 is considered C, total inequality of income distribution. Which area of the curve represents the greatest level of inequality? That is S, because it is the furthest away from the line of equality. Remember, the line of equality is the 45-degree angle from the origin, and essentially it is furthest away from that line, and it is also closer to the line of inequality. Okay, it's not gonna, hold on. Let me fit it. Line of inequality. Which area will have the smallest Gini coefficient? That would be A. Remember that Gini coefficient works in a bit of a gradient where there's total equality and total inequality, right? And these operate as two extremes between 0 and 1. So you find that total equality, the more even your income distribution is, the closer you are to the line of equality. And then the further you are, the closer you are to total inequality, which is 1. So you find that P will have a Gini coefficient which is probably like closer to 0, so probably like 0.1, 0.2 in that region, because it's the closest to the line of equality. Best income, it has the greatest, it has the most even income distribution of all the other curves. 43 says, which of the following factors most likely causes an increase in the wage rate of construction workers? That would be B, an increase in the market price of housing. Increase in the market price of housing essentially is the answer, because in order to purchase housing you need an income, and your income is derived from your wages that you get from the firm, and in this case the construction workers get it from the heads of the construction firm. So if there's an increase in the price of housing, you need to offset that with an increase in wage rate, and usually they probably do some collective bargaining through a trade union is to actually get this wage rate increase. And one of the talking points would probably be that there's an increase in the price of housing. 44 says a shift in the demand curve from DD to D1 would result in a decrease in economic rent. All right. It says what is the average physical product APP when there is one worker. Remember, APP refers to TPP over, in this case, the number of workers, or you could just say quantity. And in this case, the number of workers is 1, because they said when there's 1, and the total product is 3. So therefore, the answer would be 3. And like that, we have reached the end of this paper. I do hope that you have learned something from this. Please remember that the price to learn is 0, so raise your demand for excellence.